Of course, you know Justine. She's a former Montreal city councillor and consultant at Espace Stratégie. We debate quite often on the Big Five
Yes, we
with
do.
Elias Mackos, but it's always a great debate and a great discussion to have. Justine, good to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, David. I'm happy to be here.
So, Justine, before we get into our political talk here, I see it on Twitter. You had a big day today in your life, didn't you? Tell me about that. Your son is actually entered the service, the Canadian Armed Forces. Is that right?
Yes, he has. Yeah, he's doing his own thing. I mean, he said to me a couple of years ago, pandemic or no pandemic, he had two goals for himself. He said, I want to join the armed forces and I want a motorcycle. And he has on his own achieved both of those things, both of which terrify his mother. So it's, a mixture of pride and just feeling, of course, that a little bit of empty-nestness today because I dropped him off for his basic training. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what's his name? Tell us his name.
Charles.
Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I think all of us would like to say thank you, Charles, for your service. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
Wow. That's a big moment for a mom, isn't it?
It's huge. It's huge. And I'm proud of him. We're all proud of him.
Yes.
So.
Well, I don't know Charles, but I'm proud of him too. So no, seriously, no, it's such a personal sacrifice to serve your country like that. It's beautiful, and thank you. So
thanks. I'll pass it along.
Yes, please do. Let's get down to some business here, and an interesting topic because we haven't spoken about this for a while now, but it's still a big deal. What's going on with the REM de l'Est? What's going to happen? What's the future of that? Is that still on somehow?
So isn't that funny that, because it's one thing to complain about something and to criticize the way it's being done. But did you actually expect that the CDPQ was going to drop out and say this has become a hot potato, so you take it? Because we've heard Montreal criticizing it. We've heard the mayor criticizing it. We've heard the Association of Commercial Business Owners criticizing it, residents and so on. Nobody was happy with it. It's like this is a project that everybody loved to grumble about. Yeah. But personally, and you just said you didn't either, I didn't expect that they were just going to drop it and say, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. I think what happened is that it became a project that not only was eliciting a lot of criticism, but I think that it became to the point where they were going to have to make so many modifications to the project that it was no longer going to be financially viable. And that's what's key here is that when the Caisse de dépôt leads the project, it has to be financially viable. It's not a public service project. It's not run like public infrastructure like the subway, which is hugely subsidized and doesn't need to make a profit. So when it gets to that point where they're looking at it and going, you know what, if we can't run it where we want and we can't open up land to develop along the trajectory, then it's just not interesting anymore. So what's going to happen now? That's the big question. And we've seen Québec solidaire step in and say, whatever happens, if we're in power, it is not going to be an elevated train, that's for sure. So what do they mean by that? Do they mean a subway? Do they mean a tramway? These are interesting options, of course, very different in terms of cost. So financing a subway is a huge endeavor.
Massive.
It was expensive back in the day when we did it in the 60s, but trying to do that now, I don't know where they would get the money. So I think what we're looking at is a tramway. Honestly.
Yeah, but I think you're on point here because the Caisse de dépôt's mandate is not to finance public transit. Its mandate is to make money, right? It's a pension fund. And it got in the transit business in Vancouver and elsewhere in the world and did the first REM because it had a model that made money. And it said to the government, well, we can't make money if we need to add this, that, and the other thing and change this, that, and the other thing. But now it turns back to the government and the CEQ government. I understand you're talking about the Québec solidaire position on this, but honestly, we're heading, unless there's a huge change in the next 4 months, we're looking at another CEQ government. Do you think the CEQ government will ever go ahead with any type of train for the East? I mean, unless it reaches like places like Repentigny or Mascouche or whatever. I don't know. Do you think that's going to be the play here?
Well, the reason I brought up Québec Solidaire is because they're elected right now in Hochelaga, where there has been a big backlash against the REM. But you're right; it's very unlikely that they're going to form the government after this election. The CAQ, it looks like they are quite happy to say, you know what, this has now become a project that's going to be for Terrebonne. It's going to be for people on the North Shore. And Montreal, you guys can just figure out what it is that you want. So, you know, it actually makes sense in the sense that we already have a subway line, the Green Line that runs out to the east end of the island, that the train is going to hook into that. So it makes sense to bring those two infrastructures together, but it does leave a gap, right, for people who were expecting that we were going to be having a line that was running directly from the East End into the city center. So, where it becomes interesting to look at other projects like a tramway is when you don't look at it from the perspective simply of bringing people from the periphery to the city center, but you look at it as more of a, how does this plug in with the existing network, and how do we also get people from neighborhood to neighborhood? So inter-neighborhood transit, if you will. And that's where I think that we can look at other projects, and other projects will be interesting, but it will take something. And you're right, the election result is going to determine how interesting it is for the CAQ to actually do something in that part of the city.
Do you think Valérie Plante's going to push for that? A tramway?
She hasn't said anything. She's been really quiet on it. So she was very vocal, complaining about, not being happy with the way the REM was presented and having an elevated train and the impact that it was going to have on downtown and creating an urban fracture and so on. And she was upset also about the fact that the city was going to have to pay for everything that goes around it. So, putting a bike path underneath and pedestrian walkways and parks and so on. But now that the project's been changed, she has taken a major step back, and we've heard her being criticized as well for changing her opinion on it rather quickly. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know what kind of conversations happened when before the case withdrew, but I don't think it was very nice. And now she's going to have to they're going to have to reorganize at the city level and come up with a proposal.
Absolutely. And we're talking about the election. Now, with the seeming unpopularity of the Liberals in Montreal, and the numbers back that up right now, some people are starting to think that Montreal may be up for grabs. That was a piece of the Gazette's Philippe Autier. What do you think in your neck of the woods? I mean, you're in Hochelaga Maisonneuve, and you represented, when you were a city councillor, you were more on the West Island. But
that's right.
How do you, from where you stand, how do you see Montreal going at this point, looking forward to the election in October?
Well, it's very different. You're right, depending on where you are in the city. I do think that for the Liberals, it's very shaky right now. So they kind of took. Here's what happened. Dominique Anglade became leader at a very difficult moment, because the CAQ is really having a moment right now. They were building up and taking off, and now they're gaining ground and solidifying and becoming sort of ensconced as the governing party for the majority of, especially French-speaking Quebecers. So they are arriving in a position of comfort. They're occupying the center court. And Anglade, I think, initially said, you know what, we've got to fight for it. We've got to go and win those Francophone votes. We've got to go head-to-head against the CAQ in the regions. And so that's what she started out with. And it's at this late point in the campaign that she's realizing that didn't work. We're going to have to fall back on our positions and make sure that we preserve the seats that we still have on the island of Montreal, representing our more traditional base. It's not, they've also represented, the Liberals have also represented Francophone ridings, but now they're worried about losing Montreal. They're worried about losing the English-speaking ridings and the allophone ridings. And I think that is they're absolutely in danger of losing that. But the question is, who are people going to vote for if they're not voting for the Liberals? And that's always been the situation that Anglophone Montrealers find themselves in. They can't vote for the Parti Québécois. Most of them are not likely to vote for the CAQ with Bill 96 on the table. Québec solidaire is maybe a little bit too cozy with sovereignty for Anglophones to be really comfortable with that party. Although
and Bill 96. They support Bill 96.
Exactly, and Bill 96, although there are some, I do know some left-leaning Anglophone Montrealers who are looking very seriously at Québec solidaire. And so that leaves the Conservative Party of Quebec, and they're, that's pretty right-wing. Like, they are way right-wing of the CAQ, and there's a lot of other things in there. There's not just language issues in the English debate, right? There's a lot of other stuff going on, too. So how comfortable are English Montrealers casting their ballot with the Conservatives? I think that's where the Liberals have a chance of preserving their seats. And then you have Ballarama coming along with, he had Mouvement Montréal, now he's transformed that into Mouvement Québec. You've got Colin Standish coming in, proposing a new party, the Canadian Party of Quebec. But how much of a chance do they have of actually winning a seat? I think they're more likely to just chip away a few votes and not actually gain a seat. So in the end, I think that we're likely to see, for the Liberals anyway, I think we're likely to see a similar number of seats on the island of Montreal, although they may lose a few in the East End, around where they currently have a couple seats in the East End of Montreal. But there are a couple that are looking a little bit shaky, that might go to the CAQ.
Absolutely. Justine, we'll have to stop it there, but great conversation as always. Thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon.
Thanks, David. Have a good day. Have a good show.